but this. I'm the steward of basketball fans in this position. I have to ask you this: LeBron is clearly having some sort of mental meltdown. His mind is his confidence, whatever it is. Something is wrong with LeBron. Something is wrong with LeBron. You see this. He's not aggressive. He's passing up shots. He's not driving. It's not LeBron. Yeah. We all know LeBron. That's not LeBron.
We're best of friends, and so we spend a lot of time together. And so I wanted to get to the root of it because, bro, this is why we got together, to do this. And so he couldn't get out of it. I don't know, what it was. He struggled a little bit, and I go back and I look, and I felt like in that series, I probably, because of the mismatch situation, I had the best.
The lights dim for a second, and then the timeline explodes. When Dwyane Wade revisited 2011, he didn't recycle debate show talking points. He didn't defend the legacy. He didn't minimize the collapse. Instead, he did something far more disruptive. He took responsibility. For years, the Heat's loss to Dirk Nowitzki in Dallas has been framed around one dominant storyline. LeBron James struggled under the brightest lights. His numbers dipped. His aggression faded late in games. Critics labeled it immaturity, pressure, even fear. But Wade's comments shift the lens. He admitted two things that hit hard. He believed he was playing well enough to be in the finals MVP conversation if Miami had won. He felt he failed as a leader by not doing more to steady LeBron during that storm. That's not casual reflection. That's structural accountability. Importantly, Wade didn't deliver this as an accusation. His tone wasn't bitter or revisionist. It was introspective, almost protective in hindsight. He talked about wanting to get to the root of what happened because that was the entire purpose of the Big Three experiment. They came together to win championships. When a moment fractured, he believes part of his job was to prevent that fracture from widening. And he's saying he didn't. That admission quietly rewrites the mythology. For more than a decade, the narrative has largely centered on LeBron's individual failure, a necessary chapter in his eventual redemption arc championships in 2012 and 2013. Finals MVPs, a legacy fortified by resilience. The 2011 collapse became the catalyst for evolution. But Wade's perspective reframes 2011 not as a solo meltdown, but as a leadership breakdown inside a championship contender. If the veteran presence didn't fully insulate the younger superstar, if the internal communication wasn't sharp enough, if the emotional management wasn't synchronized, then the story becomes more complicated than LeBron wasn't ready. It becomes a case study in how even elite talent can wobble without unified leadership structure. And that's why this moment resonates. Wade spent years defending the Heat era, protecting its image, guarding the narrative of dominance and brotherhood. So when he now says, "I should have done more," it carries weight. It suggests that greatness isn't just about scoring averages or clutch plays. It's about emotional architecture. The 2011 finals aren't being reopened to tear anyone down. They're being re-examined to understand how thin the margin is between dynasty and disappointment. And maybe that's the real grenade Wade dropped. Sometimes the loudest legacy shifts come from quiet honesty.
Because here you are hearing from Dwyane Wade, who was a teammate of LeBron's, who carried him in those playoffs that year in 2011, had led the Miami Heat in scoring that year in the playoffs, essentially admitting that LeBron cost him a championship. Now, for those...
Let's slow this down and walk through the timeline, because context matters. In 2010, the Miami Heat reshaped the league by bringing together LeBron James, Dwyane Wade, and Chris Bosh. Expectations skyrocketed overnight. By the time the 2011 NBA Finals arrived, Miami wasn't just favored. They were expected to dominate. But once they faced Dirk Nowitzki and the Dallas Mavericks, the script unraveled that LeBron's production dipped noticeably in critical moments. There were stretches where he seemed unusually passive, especially late in games. Miami struggled to find rhythm when it mattered most, and Dallas capitalized with poise and precision. The result was one of the most surprising finals outcomes in modern NBA history. For years afterward, that series followed LeBron like a shadow. Critics labeled it a turning point defined by pressure, questioning whether he had the mental edge required for championship moments at that stage of his career. The narrative was simple. Immense talent met overwhelming expectations and fell short. But Wade's recent reflection complicates that storyline. Instead of isolating the failure to LeBron's performance, Wade introduced another dimension: leadership responsibility. He suggested that the veteran structure around LeBron may not have been strong enough when adversity struck. That shifts the conversation away from individual weakness and toward team dynamics, preparation, communication, and emotional stability under pressure, and that's where things get sensitive. When a former teammate publicly says, "I should have done more," it opens a new interpretation of history. It doesn't erase LeBron's struggles in that series, but it reframes them. It suggests the issue wasn't just about skill or toughness. It was about support, cohesion, and how the team handled adversity internally. For LeBron's legacy, that creates a delicate moment. Over the past decade, he has carefully constructed a story of growth and evolution. Since 2011, he has won multiple championships, earned multiple Finals MVP honors, and built one of the most decorated careers in basketball history. The redemption arc is well documented. But Wade's comments invite fans to revisit the origin of that arc and reconsider how responsibility was shared. IT also nudges at the mythology of the Big Three era. That team was often portrayed as unified, confident, and strategically aligned. Wade's admission suggests there may have been cracks, not dramatic dysfunction, but subtle gaps in leadership structure and emotional readiness. When pressure mounted, perhaps roles weren't as clearly defined as they needed to be. This isn't an accusation. It's reflection, but reflection can be powerful. It forces fans to rethink simplified narratives and recognize that championship failures are rarely about one player alone. They're about timing, chemistry, and whether the internal leadership framework is strong enough to weather storms. And by reopening the 2011 chapter, Wade has reminded everyone that legacies aren't just built on victories. They're shaped by how teams respond when expectations collapse.
LeBron went out there and said, not one, not two, not three, not four. You know, that dumb he did. And he was so confident that they were going to win. But then now, years later, saying it's not a super team. You can't make it. These people, all they do is lie. It's like he later on says, "Oh no, it's not a super team." But then,
when Dwyane Wade speaks about 2011, there's no bitterness in his voice, no subtle jabs, no attempt to rewrite history for attention. His tone is measured, almost heavy, like someone revisiting a chapter that still carries emotional weight. He isn't pointing fingers at LeBron James to score headlines. He's examining his own role in a moment that shaped both of their careers. Wade describes leadership as something far less glamorous than fans imagine. It isn't just about speeches in the locker room or clutch baskets in the fourth quarter. It's about sensing when a teammate is overwhelmed and stepping in without hesitation. It's about absorbing pressure so someone else can breathe. And in 2011, he admits that balance wasn't handled as well as it could have been. He recalls shifting constantly between responsibilities. On one end, he was expected to steady LeBron, who was facing historic levels of scrutiny. On the other, he was still trying to dominate games and chase a championship. That dual role is exhausting. Motivator and scorer, protector and closer. Wade's point is simple. Leadership is complicated, and sometimes even great teams mismanage it. That honesty changes the conversation. For over a decade, LeBron has built a legacy defined by growth and resilience. After 2011, he returned stronger, capturing championships, earning multiple Finals MVP awards, and adding milestone after milestone to his resume. The redemption arc became central to how his career is understood. But when Wade says, "I should have done more," or suggests he might have won Finals MVP had things unfolded differently, it reopens the file. Not to diminish LeBron's accomplishments, but to ask deeper questions about structure, support, and preparation inside that locker room. And here's the ripple effect that few are discussing. When a Hall of Fame teammate publicly admits leadership gaps, front offices notice. Coaches notice. Players notice. Across the league, executives study moments like this as case studies. If even a championship-caliber locker room had blind spots, how many other teams might be overlooking similar vulnerabilities. Leadership failures aren't just emotional footnotes. They influence how franchises build rosters. They shape decisions about which veterans to sign, which personalities to prioritize, and which coaches are trusted to manage superstar dynamics. Teams now think carefully about the emotional ecosystem around their franchise players. If younger stars hear that even the famed Big Three era had internal missteps, they may demand stronger systems before committing long-term. They might ask tougher questions about support, communication, and hierarchy. That's the structural consequence of Wade's transparency. In the end, this isn't about blame. It's about evolution. Wade's reflection reminds everyone that championships aren't just won with talent. They're sustained with clarity, trust, and leadership alignment. And sometimes, the most powerful admission isn't he failed. It's we could have handled it better. That kind of honesty doesn't tear down legacies. It adds depth to them.
We witnessed a collapse from a superstar unlike anything I've ever seen before. And it was in 2011 that GOAT debate ended with him and Michael Jordan. It was done since then for a lot of people. LeBron fans like Nick Wright and all of them tried to explain it away. What will happen?
When people revisit the tape, one thing is clear. Dwyane Wade played at a finals MVP level individually. He averaged strong numbers, attacked relentlessly, and was Miami's most consistent offensive force throughout the series. The issue wasn't his production. The issue was cohesion. Across the floor stood Dirk Nowitzki, whose calm never wavered. Dallas didn't panic when trailing. They didn't splinter late in games. Their execution tightened under pressure instead of fraying. That contrast, emotional steadiness versus visible tension, became the hidden battleground of the series. Then came the infamous hallway coughing skit. Whether overblown or not, it symbolized something larger. Miami leaning into swagger while Dallas leaned into focus. In Game 5, Dirk responded with a performance that felt less like revenge and more like control. That night shifted psychological momentum. Miami looked unsure. Dallas looked inevitable. Wade's recent framing adds a deeper layer. He isn't saying, "I did my part, someone else didn't." He's saying elite performances mean little without leadership continuity, the invisible thread that holds a team steady when pressure spikes. That's the part young stars often underestimate. They assume talent scales under stress. It doesn't. Pressure amplifies cracks. Leadership in the finals isn't loud. It's surgical, pulling a teammate aside after a brutal turnover before doubt spreads. Quietly adjusting the offensive flow when someone's confidence dips. Shielding a struggling star from media noise so they can reset privately. Reading body language before it becomes a headline. Those jobs don't show up in box scores, but they decide championships. In 2011, Miami had elite moments. What they lacked, by Wade's own admission, was synchronized management of those moments. The team never fully stabilized when turbulence hit. Meanwhile, Dallas, veteran-heavy, disciplined, treated every swing like routine business. That's why Wade's reflection feels like a masterclass in hindsight. He's effectively telling younger players, leadership is active, not ceremonial. Swagger without structure is fragile. Public composure doesn't replace private accountability. Maintaining championship focus isn't about highlight plays. It's about dozens of small, unseen corrections that prevent a spiral before it starts. Wade's honesty reframes 2011 not as a simple superstar failure, but as a collective leadership shortfall at the worst possible time. And that's the lesson modern contenders should be studying carefully. Talent gets you to the finals. Emotional infrastructure wins them.